Hey, that's a lot of Bollotta.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bollotta-FIDE, your one and only pod for events and entertainment. I'm Anthony Bollotta.
And I'm Alexia Christina Postolidis.
And today we have a fabulous panel with us. Alex, why don't you kick us off by introducing our panelists?
Absolutely. Please welcome to our show the president and owner of Empire Force Events, Jaclyn Bernstein, the CEO of Technisch Creative, Heidi Brumbach, and the chief experiential architect for Lenny Talarico Events, Lenny Talarico.
Hi, friends. Thank you. Welcome to the podcast. So glad you could be here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. I wanted to huddle you together to talk about the Big Beautiful Ballroom. It's been in the headlines since President Trump tore down the East Wing to make room for it. The estimates for the structure began at $200 million, grew to $400 million, and now we're looking at $1 billion. Of course, that includes some of the security features the building is said to have. The planned size of this ballroom is 90,000 square feet. The goal is to seat 1,000 people, roughly 90 square feet per person. So I wanted to give some context and start the conversation with logistics. And will it work? The idea, the hope, the question, will it work? Is 90,000 square feet a reasonable size ballroom for 1,000 people? Who'd like to start?
You're throwing around some Vegas-sized numbers there.
Wow. It's real, truly.
I actually do want to say something. I think that a lot of that space is support space. So the actual ballroom itself, if I understand correctly, is 23 to 25,000.
Or should.
So that's interesting. And where have you heard this? What news have you read?
Oh, good.
I haven't been able to find anything, any renderings.
Whatever
other than
AI
what
said
I
is
shared
correct.
with you.
You're right.
Well, I mean, while we're thinking about that, I mean, again, I would agree with what Heidi says is, should it be versus what we know or what has been publicly presented are two different things. So again, 90,000 square foot, back to your initial question, is way more space than what you need for a 1,000-person seated dinner. However, operationally, it may not be enough space at all if you factor in everything else that you need to support that. So to Heidi's point, you probably only need 25,000 of that to seat people. However, there's a lot of other things that no one's talking about.
Well, let's step back, if I may, when
Please.
we're talking about can it support 1,000 people. Right now, you cannot do an event there at the White House, the People's House, for 1,000 guests. So whatever this ballroom size may be, however it gets built and whatever the support that Heidi brings up, which is very important for us in the event profession, back of house, et cetera, and whatever it does seat will be larger than whatever else is there. So it would accommodate whatever it would accommodate if there was a decision to have appropriate events at the White House. Understood? I mean, that's my thought about it. If there was not enough land or there was more land to do it.
Well, is it appropriate to have 1,000-person events at the White House? I think that's a great question to ask.
Yes.
Let's talk about the logistics even outside of the ballroom, right? The parking, the necessary credentialing that has to be done for all of those people, the coat check, all of the things that the valet, all of the things that get people there. Is it feasible?
I don't think Lenny and Heidi think too much about coat check, or you
Not at all. Not at all.
As the New Yorker here, for those who are listening, who haven't figured that out yet. I mean, we think of coat check even in the warm weather because people schlep stuff, which can obviously be another concern at a place like the White House about not being able to check certain things except for codes.
But
so,
yes.
But those are all relevant. Those are all relevant things, and it's true. I mean, taking a step, towards it. The White House has hosted events for 1,000 people. They just haven't done it inside the building.
Correct. Thank you for updating what I said.
So again, I think that it is feasible and it's possible. Is a ballroom necessary is really what the question should be, or is a ballroom of that scale necessary or appropriate? Even with the ballroom that we're talking about, there are other things which Jaclyn brought up, which are logistics. Who's going to park? No one currently parks at the White House, even when they do 1,000-person events. So there's still shuttling and all of the other coordination and vendor, coordination that no one's addressing, even with the ballroom.
Mhm. And we're talking about, if I may assert, a room that how many times a year will the room be used? How many times a year could a ballroom of that size be used? Let's hypothetically say 6 times a year, which is a lot. That's 6,000 person events a year to host. Is it feasible then to have a staff that is dedicated to the events at the White House? Is it feasible to have a chef and a team that prepares meals that don't necessarily work for the White House on a full time basis? Because that's additional work, and a lot of it, 6 more events. Is that feasible? Is it cost efficient to do it that way? Thoughts?
It potentially, and if I can throw out a name here, I had this discussion with David Adler from BizBash about this, and potentially the concept is, if this goes forward, that it might not necessarily be run by the White House staff per se. I mean, they have staff, they have servers, they have chefs already dealing with the White House and whatever else they're doing at present, but they might look to utilize an external operator to do this. We in events are working at major hotels and convention centers that can seat and do 1,500 maybe. They might not do 1,000 there all the time. They might build air walls and make reasons to have reasons to do 100, 200, whatever it may be, or different types of indoor setups that are not necessarily a seated dinner, potentially some meetings that they decide to do. But the concept of using an outside operator, that's what a lot of, again, separate from a hotel and convention center, but offsite, off-prem venues and restaurant groups are doing. So that becomes a whole nother concept of how then does the White House and the federal government look to utilize people that coordinate those particular services. We are very proud to be the preferred event production and destination manager company at Ellis Island and working with the Statue of Liberty as well, the national monuments here in New York. They have an official concessionaire that works with the National Park Service, which is run by the Department of the Interior of the federal government, that runs those events. So looking back for us and like thinking bigger, not looking back, but thinking bigger picture, us in events are feeling that's probably not going to be easy for the White House to add that whole other department to do this, but to look to an external operator. And further to your point, when you started this, I would think personally, and all of us, if you're going to build a structure, they're not going to want that just to only host 6 events a year. There should be a good enough reason to utilize it for all of us for other events and logistics and activations, whatever it may be. The Easter egg hunt rains that day. Bring all the kiddies inside and do something in there afterwards. So whatever it may be. Or okay, I guess if I said the Easter egg hunt, I got to talk about the national candle lighting of the menorah during Hanukkah, right? I got to say something on all the sides here.
And I
On all
think
the
that, Jackie,
sides.
I think that's where the challenges become. So back to the original question, is it feasible? Anything to build is feasible, but is the ROI realistic? Absolutely not for 6 events a year. So the question that people should be asking is, are there plans that somebody wants to then monetize that? And that's where we begin getting into a sticky situation, being that it's a federal building and it's on the presidential grounds and everything like that. And it becomes a very convoluted conversation as to what the real purpose behind
Mhm.
the building is and why.
It's a I'm sorry, it's a very interesting argument. The whole idea of monetizing it and the fact that it is the people's house.
Yep.
There is
That does
no
complicate it.
commercial building in the world that they're going to spend that kind of money on that can say we can show ROI for 6 events a year with it. It's not
No way.
possible.
It's not possible.
And
And I'm
who's
glad you brought
they?
that up because I know
Oh,
Anthony and I'm so sorry. Anthony and I were talking about that. This is not the type of thing where you're going to be bringing in private events. And I love that, Jaclyn, you brought up the air walls because that's a question I have. Is this a building of this size? Does it have air walls? Can it accommodate a smaller group without it
that
looking
would
outsized?
I think anyone that's building a venue, whether it's a convention center or a hotel's building a ballroom or just an off-site event venue that's going to build something so large, whatever large may be, would also think ahead, what else can we accommodate,
Of
right?
course. Of
So
course.
that would make sense. But when we're saying there's been a lot of discussion about that, monetizing it, whether they're not going to have outside events. Where is this money? We're not trying to open up that political side of it, but who then is then going to be paying for it, the building of it, and then the actual upkeep. And also talking about size,
Because it matters. Because it matters.
because well said, is that from again and doing research about this, but also coming here with fresh concepts. When people around the world, or you're watching TV, you see the White House. Obviously, there's been updates to the White House throughout many years on different presidencies for whatever reasons,
Hmm.
modernization, et cetera. Is the concept of a building attached, adjacent, alongside the White House being bigger than the White House kind of not the way it should be? I'm a New Yorker here. Obviously, we have the World Trade Center, tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. There are residential buildings in New York that are taller than the Empire State Building. I personally don't enjoy that. I think there's a law or ordinance that there can't be a building taller than the Washington Monument in Washington.
Hmm.
I might be lying, or I think that's correct. I know my New York geography and history and all,
Correct.
but I'm thinking, are you going to look at the White House and then there's this big clunky building next to it that's bigger than it? That just from perspective, this is not any side of the political sides of it. Just yeah, maybe it's okay to have this ballroom and have some extra additional indoor space, but should it overpower the White
Sure.
House?
And
It eclipses the White House.
I like to bring Heidi in because Heidi, I know, has a great observation for some of this stuff, is that conceptually what we're being shown looks beautiful in renderings. However, operationally and logistically, it's many times what event designers see and then have to hand to a production company to say, can you make this work?
Mhm.
And Heidi knows firsthand sometimes what that's like.
Yeah, there are things that I see that might look beautiful. One good thing is it won't be a rentable space. They're not doing outside events. It's only the state dinners, the federal events. So they don't need to be quite as blank canvas, sort of, let's say. However, there are some things that, while maybe they're beautiful some days, you don't want to look at those chandeliers all the time. I would hope that they design them to be retractable or somehow
Mhm.
removable. The glass walls, yeah, right. The glass walls, I've heard that they have plans for acoustics, but oh my God, it just sounds like an acoustical nightmare. Not to
Unintended.
mention, there will have to be so many cameras. I assume they will have cameras installed because this will be a place that will utilize broadcast frequently. The glass, the reflective qualities, all of that is a bit of a production nightmare. So I'm curious to see how they handle that.
I think what we're looking at here is, I hate saying it this way, but I think we saw a lot of crap thrown at a wall to say, oh, this is what it should look like and this is what we need. And no one logistically or operationally has been brought in
Mhm.
to help talk this through and direct the conversation. There may be a lot of things that we as lay people don't know about this construction project yet, but their communication has been abysmal in trying to get information accurately out there.
I don't know that they have any more information, honestly. And to that point, I couldn't agree more. All we've seen are artist renderings of what the building uh, might look like. Somebody's vision, obviously, President Trump's vision. It looks like President Trump's style, but there hasn't, it seems, been any thought put to how it will work,
No.
how it will actually function.
Well, going back to the style, obviously being a New Yorker and doing work at the plaza and working with President Trump when being a president probably wasn't maybe it was, a thought in his eye, but glimmer in his eye. What is that? That's that phrase. a twinkle in his eye. But back then, you see the Plaza Hotel and you see the opulence and the look and the gold. So that makes sense. We've worked at Trump Taj Mahal, again, that look. And I must say, I have
That
been
before or after bankruptcy?
well, yeah, before and then after, both at Taj Mahal. And I must say, I have been to Mar-a-Lago. I've been there with our very close friend, Chad Everett of Galaxy Productions, who's been
Mhm.
working there and doing events, again, way before it was a glimmer in Trump's eye to be president and doing events. And when he invited me there, and I feel it's just interesting to say, people said, "How could you go? That's horrible." I said, as an event producer, how can I not go to a place that we all are hearing about to see how an actual event operates there? So I went, this was not a political event whatsoever, but it would be conspicuous by its absence to me in my head. I get invited to go to something to see how an event operates there. And while I was there, yes, I saw the gold being painted as you see now above the fireplace in the White House, which exists now, might not exist in the next presidency. That's not for us to discuss. Every president comes in and puts their mark, their style, their look on it. But when anyone that's on this session here, anyone that's listening, you close your eyes, you can imagine what the look is that the President Trump is going to make for his ballroom. Although Heidi brings up a great point. If they're not going to build a blank box, because then they'll go elsewhere to do it, they need to have some sort of look. And the look, I would think, should, stand the test of time, or at least the next couple of years of what it's going to be. That we're not expecting it to look like, the club, but a lot of people, again, who might be watching are put off by all that glitz and glamour. We all go into hotel ballrooms all the time. We're thinking, why do they make such an ornate
Mhm.
chandelier or the carpet, et cetera? Why couldn't it be a little more neutral so it could blend with everything else? So that's just,
Th-
it's not even a answer. It's just, that's what it's going to be. That's
I-
how it's set forth.
and that's a valid point. But the thing that sort of is the thorn in my side is the plaza was built many, many, many years ago. This is
1907.
this 1907. This is a new structure, so there is an opportunity in the structure to blend the aesthetic with the functionality in a way that works for both, right?
For
And let's
all.
just for all. So let's just hope that's what's done. Security aside, because obviously a lot of money is going to be spent on making sure those huge arch windows are, bulletproof.
Bulletproof.
Uh, Aside from the security, the functionality of the space, and to the idea that it's not just a black box, that it has some style. Uh, is it appropriate to say host a UFC championship there?
Is that
So that
real?
monetizing, is that real? Well, there's gonna be one on the south lawn of the White House
There
July.
will be one on the South Lawn for the 250th anniversary. Yes.
And
Well,
that brings
it's
it back to the
President
point that I
Trump's
brought up.
birthday that day.
Yeah.
Yes. June 14th.
June 14th is his birthday. But that's the point that I brought up, in that what nobody's talking about is that, are there ulterior motives or things that are at play here? This ballroom makes zero sense when you're only doing 4 to 6 events a year. However, from a businessman's perspective, they are, I'm sure, thinking about how else could it be used? Who can we find a way to book into this space? And when you bring up the UFC or someone else who might be currently in the favor of the administration, are we now, this is going to sound terrible, prostituting the people's house in some manner
Oh,
for
okay.
whoever the highest bidder is?
Well, that's monetizing it, isn't it? Isn't that the same thing?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if there's been a lot of discussion of, hey, can this be rented out? If the president, whoever that may be, decides to bring UFC in, we could sit here and debate it. I personally don't think a UFC event is appropriate at the White House for what it is. And some might say, I just don't. Some might say, well, I don't want to go see a classical, orchestra perform. But some might say, well, that's just easy and it makes sense being there. Someone here mentioned it about, I think it was you, Anthony, about with the correspondence dinner being there. There's probably, separate from what happened this year, which was horrible, at the Hilton with that particular situation. And there was a lot of discussion that all of us in events are thinking,
Mhm.
we could have been at the hotel that day just because we had another small event, and we could have seen all that security and said, wow, I can get through here. I know how to walk and talk. And talk. There's the accent for you.
Talk.
But we see what happens in hotels that are large, when there's a big 1,000-person event happening in the ballroom, and then we're still around there. So my thinking, though, is, and I did discuss this with David Adler, is would the White House Correspondents' Dinner actually want to be held at the White House, no matter who's president? Would that be appropriate? Because part of that is a lot of tongue in cheek and a lot of talking about the president. They wouldn't do it in someone's home. So again, would that dinner be there? Or they might just say, finally, we can get out of the Hilton and we need a large space and it happens to be here. I don't even know if that's for us to decide, but it's good conversation for us being at events and knowing how venues are chosen.
There are
There are articles
many
out
things.
there about this.
Yeah. There are many things that people would have to discuss and say what is appropriate, who's permitted to do events in that venue or not. Now, I, for one, listen, I'm all for people building ballrooms. I think it's a great thing. Do I think that this is a wise use of funds wherever those funds are coming from in that location? My opinion is no. Because for the $1 billion that's being projected at this point in time, far less money, there are places in Washington, D.C., which the federal government owns that could very easily be retrofit to use that. Look at the Melon in Washington, D.C., which is already an event venue. For far less than $1 billion, retrofitting that and making that a new upgrade with the security and everything like that, they already have infrastructure to put on large events. So what's the real purpose of this ballroom? Is it a grandiose testament to someone's point in time, or are we really trying to solve the ballroom problem?
What ballroom problem? We didn't have a ballroom problem before.
We had tent people now that we're putting out of business. That's the way I look at it.
We're going to put them on the roof of the ballroom. They're going to tent they're going to make a roof and they're going to be able to tent it. That's how we're thinking. Are they building a rooftop on the top of the ballroom?
I don't like the fact that the U.S. government is now in the business of putting small enterprise out of business. Okay, what happened to all of those tent and flooring people and those generation people? Okay, who rent generators? Now they're going away because we're building a big, beautiful ballroom that's really not necessary for 4 times a year.
And not to get political, there's the underlying bunker situation. Is that the real reason for the ballroom?
And again, none of us will ever know that.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll never know that because this did not go through the process that generally federal projects are supposed to go through. I can only, and I'll shut up in a minute here, but I will tell you, many of you don't know this. I sat for 3 years as a political appointee on the Community Development Recommending Board here in Las Vegas. And the whole role of that is to hear nonprofits coming in asking for federal funding, and then we would make recommendations, and then it goes through the process. That didn't happen here with this. Okay, so we have process in place for things. It's just a matter of holding people accountable to follow them.
Well, the process was obliterated when the East Wing came down, and nobody knew that it was going to happen. That was what began all of this, truly. And the point of it being so big and eclipsing the White House does make it feel like a vanity project, and does feel disrespectful, and almost feels like a slap in the face, as though to say, this is so big, you can't knock it down. And it's going to cost so much money that it's going to sit here forever and ever and ever as an ode to me, which is one of the things I find problematic about it at a time when money could obviously be spent elsewhere and needs to be spent elsewhere.
I don't disagree. I'm all for building the building. I think it's a great idea to have something to build it, but I think that we should follow a process.
Well, and that's a very valid point. And then to further what Anthony just said, and I started about the size mattering, that if they're going to build some sort of facility, event space, maybe even calling it a ballroom is a challenge, because the minute people hear ballroom, they hear that schmancy, gilded, folded look, correct? But all this could be done, but still not towering and making the White House just appear smaller to this amenity space next to it.
There is such a thing as appropriately sized.
Well,
Of all the pressing
Yes.
issues going on, I wasn't aware that that was at the top of the list of problems that the United States was.
Right, right. Where are we gonna recept and dine by the White House? And that's another valid point. We were talking about what this space is being used for. If you're gonna sit 1,000 people in this room, where are those 1,000 people recepting or
Exactly.
right prior to that? Where's that? We're gonna use that term, pre-function area, which is so
Exactly.
beautiful. But where is that all happening as well?
We're about
So,
about the
so if
kitchen.
it's seating
About
1,000,
the kitchen.
how many is the standing? And that's just great to know that exists then. And
Mhm.
again, it's because the federal building, are states allowed to use this? Are American companies allowed to? But it has to tie in with it being adjacent to the White House. It's
That's right.
not a convention center space or event venue space in DC. It's right there.
And it's interesting. I can almost see the current administration, if this thing is built before it ends, making it available for rental. I can almost see that happen now,
Do you
although I
think the
don't see.
Human Rights Campaign would be allowed to do their annual Washington, D.C. dinner there?
But
I
whatever's
do believe Gay Pride is
yeah,
scheduled
yeah.
for the ballroom, 2029 or something like that.
But whatever's being built in there, they need to think about there should be something from every state of the union that is physically there, whether it's
Mm,
a piece of wood or marble or fabric that's made. What are states known for that could be incorporated? It would be wonderful that every element that is in there that are from American companies, that someone from every state or every country in the world that people work here. We're not opening that other side there about
mhm,
immigration. If you know, live here and work here and you're in the trade, carpentry, metalworks, whatever it may be, that you get to work on this. That should be the story of whatever then is being built. There
mm.
shouldn't be, pardon me to my friends that are Italian marble being flown in to be in the White House.
But what about our friends in the Golden State? I don't think that they're really in the running at the moment.
I don't even think we're in
Oh,
America anymore,
yeah,
honestly. Uh, but 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 actually, there's a good point in all of this, and you brought it up earlier, Lenny, when you talked about a process, and you're reiterating the fact here, Jaclyn. We've all worked in committee. We all know what that is like and how that stalls progress. So, are there any props to be given for the fact that this was done? That somebody took the bull by the horns and just made it happen, knowing what it feels like to work in a committee?
Well, yes, because we're not going to sit here and have this meeting about should there be a ballroom or not, because people are doing that at a bar right now talking about it, and they're sitting on both sides talking about the yays and nays of that. So, I mean, we could talk all the time about things that are been happening, and Congress didn't get an opportunity to discuss what should be done. So that's between those branches of government. Yeah, there should be props given there wasn't a committee. However, there shouldn't be deciding of what everything's going to be without when they knocked everything down, but to build it without taking everything that we're saying into consideration here and then all the other elements to make
Mhm,
sure that it's functional. Not when we say profitable, not costing too much that, as we said, there's other efforts that monies could be
mhm.
going towards, et cetera. But isn't there a lot of discussion of certain monies are not coming from us,
W-
our tax-paying money to build it?
Well,
That's
it was
coming from
initially wasn't initially none of it was coming from taxpayer money,
right.
but now it's estimated to be at $1 billion, and from what I understand, it's all coming from taxpayer
Yeah, okay,
money,
so
and
that's
that's
a
the
big
push right
differential,
now.
none to
Right.
everything. And
Done
then
to everything, and let's, make the cost 5 times what it was originally as
but
well.
it's one thing to build it, it's another thing to operate it. If we are told right now it doesn't cost anything, a lot of Americans might say, "Well, great, I don't care, build it, but don't make it bigger than the White House," all these things we've been discussing. But then how does it get operated, which starts from the very beginning? Is it gonna
Mhm.
go out to bid to an operator? Are they now gonna add all these other jobs? Great thing, let's get more jobs for people, love it. But then you said whether it's 6 or 16 events of that size each year. That's why there should be some focus on this. Are they stressed for space in the White House that when there's not an event, there's chairs and offices and they're using it for other things that they do? I don't know. And if someone's listening to that thinking that's a crazy comment, we're just trying to be productive. If you're going to have space sitting empty for a good amount of time, what else could it be used for?
Yeah.
Right.
And again, when we're talking about that kind of investment, when you're talking about $1 billion, I mean, think about that. That's what some organizations spend to build a new hotel or convention
Right.
center. And so that's just not one room. That's everything in the infrastructure that goes with it. That's building in everything that you're going to need for staffing and security and all of the things that you need.
Mhm.
The operational components, uniform control. Okay. What about the dishwashers? What about all of the other things? So those are the things that we don't know about this ballroom yet. To Heidi's original remark when she started off is that maybe this is not a 90,000 square foot ballroom. Maybe it's 25,000 and the rest of it is backup space, but none of that has been communicated to anyone.
Right. Right. And, a lot of the activities that take place at the White House now, uh, they're meant to bring people into the White House, not into a ballroom. You come into the White House, and there's a special uh, experience that you get when you do that. And the ballroom just yes, it's going to be where the East Wing was, but it just on the surface doesn't feel like it's going to be a place where people are going to feel like this is really special.
It doesn't feel
This
connected
is
because it isn't. It's again, opinion, sorry about that. It's not fitting in the confines of what's there. It's overpowering it, and I think
yes,
that's where the architectural review is, legitimate for people to say, why shouldn't this have been looked at by the National Park Service or someone else to determine
That's
scale?
fair.
and all of the history was torn down. If you've been in the East Wing, then there are parlors and dining rooms and rooms where special meetings took place, and the first lady, engaged in activities, and all of that is gone, and now we have a new space with no history.
We have a hole in the ground.
Well, I
Well, we have
hope
a hole in the
that
ground.
whatever was in those rooms that were taken down, whether it be furniture, paintings, this happened here, a plaque would be safe for that. I'm a person that doesn't necessarily like change, and I come from the historical approach, so don't like hearing that. Then we think back, but what happened maybe in the 1800s and things
Mm,
like this happen that's part of it now, that there has to be change for whatever reason moving forward, not just because someone wants it, but it's modernization, right? So we have to look forward. We not look forward like look forward exciting, but look forward to what it could potentially be.
mm.
That doesn't necessarily mean I'm either way. We're just
Mhm.
saying, now we have this hole in the ground, as you said. Now what are we going to put there?
Right, right.
We're not planting another rose garden, right? Get it?
No, it's
That's been gone.
another.
Because that okay.
Well, it sounds like, we all agree on the point that, if this had been done in in a process with a committee, for the good of the nation and Americans, then maybe it would feel differently now, and there'd, be much more, support behind it.
I
But
mean,
it
I
it
look at what you shared, and then thank you for sending some of those. I looked at the renderings. The renderings are beautiful. They're compelling. It looks like a place you would say, "Wow, isn't this spectacular and gorgeous?" However, my concern is that it's much like what I see in renderings from artists for events.
Mhm,
The proof is in the pudding, and now all of a sudden they didn't think about this, they didn't think about that. Operationally, we don't know how we're going to do that. Where's the staff coming from? How are we rigging things? To Heidi's points earlier, can you produce AV? Is it ready for broadcast? All of those things, and we don't know any of that. We don't know if any of that was even thought about, other than
mhm.
pretty and gold.
So
Well,
we or other people like us should have been on that committee. They should have
mm,
reached out to the International Live Events Association and everything else that we should.
yeah,
The Event
because
Industry Council should have been consulted.
one would hope that for $1 billion, they have already started to think about those things and put them into the budget and make sure that there's a line item for them. Otherwise, we're talking about even more money,
There's
right?
your next podcast, Anthony. Why is it that people like us, okay, are not pulled into those types of conversations on a larger scale?
Well, I have to say, when you're dealing with somebody who believes they are the best at everything,
Okay.
why is anybody else needed?
Fair enough, but I'm trying to get it away from that conversation and just say, why is it that event experts are often not pulled into conversations earlier on? Why don't we pull our production people into
I
conversations
Or
where
are they just
I
don't know about that? Are people that have built major convention centers and major hotels? I mean, the president has, separate from, yes, bankruptcies and all, has run event space before. So I don't know. My deep dive in that research, I didn't find that. Yes, there were people at major facilities that were brought in at this stage. I think it
you
just
know,
seems to be in the design
you
realm.
know,
why don't
Douglas
we let the
Manchester
sound
is a local.
engineer and say our glass windows this size a good idea, Heidi?
Right. We have a developer in town, very well known, Douglas Manchester. He's built number of ballrooms. I would not go to this man and ask him what specifications we need to make sure we have in a ballroom, because this is how it's going to be used. That knowledge needs to come from, as Lenny points out, from us. And I have no answer for why they don't bring people like us in earlier, especially production people. I have no answer for that, because I've been asking the same thing of my my clients and all the other throwers of events out there for
But
years and years and
here's
years.
what I'll say. Smart people do, because I want to give them a shout out here, is that when the developers behind Aria and City Center, part of MGM Resorts in Las Vegas, they actually brought audiovisual production people into those meetings before Aria's ballrooms were constructed. And
Beautiful.
that's why they're
Mm,
easy to work in, because they thought
right.
about all of those things. So people who know what they're doing do.
Mm.
They do. They
Well,
really know.
the I hate to say this, but the renderings do not portray that somebody who knows what they're doing is behind the architecture of the ballroom. It doesn't look like there are going to be any air walls. It doesn't look like it's really being suited for events at all. So I guess, to your point, we don't know. We'll just have to hope.
I know that it's ongoing. I do have a family member who works for the GSA, and they are related to this project. And so they're going through the vetting process now with different vendors.
Great.
Okay. Well, then that's good to hear about the vetting, and hopefully they're looking in the right direction.
I can't confirm or deny that's a truth.
We understand.
So this is
You don't have
all.
to excuse
This is the
yourself.
word on the street. The word on the
So we
street.
have to have a updated another presentation of this to have other people involved. And we all operate. I love how you said throwers of events. We all produce, we plan, we do logistics, we do the pretty as well and the glitzy.
We do.
And we know a lot of people that are, I, I don't know what to say, bigger. It's not about size of your events, although we were joking about size matters, but that have a lot of stature, that have done major events, that have worked at the White House and done events. We have a lot of our colleagues and friends through, well, it used to be ICE, the International Special Events Society, when I say ISIS, now ILEA, that have worked at the White House. Rob here worked, on inauguration balls many years ago.
Mhm.
You know what the needs are and what has to happen. And obviously, security is tantamount, et cetera. So let's hope that they do get brought in,
Yeah.
and that we get to be able to say that we had a voice from the event logistics standpoint to make sure it's well done.
Heidi, any final thought from you?
There was a lot of opinion there. Um, eh, I think my final thought is we don't know what we don't know. Until we are presented with some of these concepts and start to see things come to fruition, it's hard to pass judgment. I hope that they do all the right things.
We all hope they do all the right things. And as you say, we don't know what we don't know. I think we can all agree on that. So there's more to come. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Jaclyn. Thank you, Lenny. And of course, thank you, Alex, for being here today and for joining in on this discussion of the Big Beautiful Ballroom. Hey, leave your comments below. Hit subscribe and like if you would. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for joining us at Bollotta-FIDE.
Hey, thank you for listening to Bollotta-FIDE.
If you haven't already, please like and subscribe.
And remember to leave us your questions or comments at bollotta.com/podcast.
Bollotta-FIDE is a production of Bollotta Entertainment.
Hey, that's a lot of Bollotta. Stay engaging.